Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Mayers, president of WisBusiness.com and WisPolitics.com. We're part of the Nonpartisan State Affairs Network, a network of sites like ours around the country. Well, welcome to another edition of Talking Trade. Talking Trade is sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Carroll University, and Michael Best Strategies. I'm filling in for the usual hosts, Ken and Sandi. They have extensive travel this month, but you can see them both on April 22nd at Carroll University for an in-person Talking Trade event on tariffs. Go to the right-hand column at WisPolitics.com, go to the bottom, find the April 22nd link, and you can register for that free event. Now, today's Talking Trade program features excerpts from a virtual luncheon that WisPolitics, WisBusiness, and State Affairs did on March 24th. It was entitled Assessing the U.S. and International Energy Landscape in Time of War. And it features conversations that we had on that topic and trade that included two ex-U.S. ambassadors, Rick Graber. He was ambassador to the Czech Republic under a GOP administration. Tom Barrett, he was ambassador to Luxembourg under a Democratic administration. Peter Barca, he's a former lawmaker, congressman, and cabinet secretary at the state level. He's now representing Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future. And Kristin Gilkes, she's executive director of Customers First Coalition. So here's the program, excerpts from the March 24th virtual luncheon involving trade in time of war. It's a complex situation, so I'm going to go to a simplified question. What are the current winners and losers in your view on this? I want to go for all the panelists here. Who are the current winners and losers, and then we can go to the long-term winners and losers because maybe they're different. So why don't we start off with you, Peter? Peter Barca?
Well, the biggest winner is U.S. natural gas suppliers. The Washington Post had an interesting story just a day or so ago talking about just the demand growing exponentially. The biggest losers are consumers, both in the United States and around the world, because we've seen at the U.S. Natural Allies for clean energy just an unprecedented demand for new energy. I mean, it's just remarkable to look just from 1 year from 24 to 25 in terms of the growth and demand for energy. And it's gone up just at record paces. And I think that's true around the world too, as more and more people use more and more devices every day for their daily life. And with AI and all Google and all the other tricks of the trade we all use when we use our cell phones every day. Qatar is obviously a huge loser. They lost 70% of their capacity with the bombing that took place, and they've estimated it'll take 3 to 5 years to replace that. Japan's vice minister for international affairs indicated how 80% of the natural gas that goes through the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asia. So to some degree, they're bigger losers. But as Jeff Meyer said in an article yesterday, all of those prices are harmonized. So everybody's going to pay more, even though like America and most of Europe doesn't necessarily get most of their gas from that strait in particular. So I think that's sort of a roundup of where things stand now, but it's really hard to predict longer term because depending on how long this war goes, how many more sites are bombed, how much damage is done, whether or not the straits can be fully open and have ships passing through, whether that take a month, 2 months, 3 months, is totally unpredictable. But those are some of the immediate winners and losers.
Okay, Kristin from Customers First Coalition.
Yes, customers first. I should note we focus a lot on electricity at Customers First, but I think obviously as we talk about this, I'm going to include drivers and people impacted by gas prices and especially natural gas prices. And I wanted to also acknowledge, and I think we all do acknowledge the costs of this war that are like human costs. We appreciate the service members and their families and the civilians who are paying costs much greater than the energy costs we're talking about. So I wanted to start off by saying that and as well. So when we're talking about winners and losers. I want to be a little careful with those terms as well. But for winners, I think planners, people and organizations who are pre-planners, who saw this coming, right? We have known for years that Iran is a threat and that global energy markets are volatile. So people who planned ahead, invested in energy efficiency, utilities that have invested in diversified energy resources for their portfolio, and utilities who are using strategies like hedging, long-term contracts, and energy storage in order to help mitigate the price spikes for customers directly. And then for losers, I don't want to say losers necessarily, but I do want to say the people most impacted. Peter mentioned customers, but people who are most exposed to volatile energy prices. In Wisconsin, low and middle income customers can pay a larger share of the energy burden. So a larger share of their household income is going to their energy bills. In Wisconsin, natural gas customers, about 60% of the cost of their bill is directly related to fuel costs. And for electricity customers, about 20% of the total bill cost is related to the fuel cost of generation. So that's how customers are exposed. And I think some of the most exposed customers are those low to middle income customers, as well as I was thinking about rural customers who are in large part relying on propane to fuel their homes. And propane is exposed to even more volatile energy pricing. So rural customers who rely on propane, and then rural customers who just drive more miles and who are experiencing higher gas prices more acutely because of that.
Or who use diesel for their farm equipment or
Yes.
need fertilizer,
Yes.
affordable fertilizer as we enter growing season. I wonder, Kristin, what you think of the large and industrial users and the small businesses in terms of the energy crunch.
I mean, obviously we want to keep their costs as low as possible so that consumers are paying lower costs when, down the line when they're making their purchases. I think it hits them hardest. I mean, I've heard of larger customers who have energy bills over $1 million a month. So these fuel costs can really directly impact them. And obviously we want to help sort of mitigate those shocks through effective utility regulation that encourages utilities to do that long-term planning, use hedging, use long-term contracts to help keep those prices as low as possible.
Right. Okay. So, Tom, what do you think are the short-term winners and
For the
losers?
short term, and I don't know how short the short term is. I think without a doubt, politically, the biggest short term winner right now is Benjamin Netanyahu, because I think that this is almost his dream coming to reality. His dream to completely destabilize Iran, to go into Lebanon. He's getting everything that he's ever wanted. And he has a very willing partner right now with the United States and with President Trump. And so what he has been trying to do throughout his career, obviously, is on behalf of his country, is to thwart Iran. And so he's a huge winner. I think Vladimir Putin is a huge winner in all of this. The fact that we have now taken our foot off the gas pedal in terms of stopping their flow of oil and gas, I think is oil in particular is really significant, and I think he's got to be just clapping every day. The losers, I think, and I think the prior speakers have referred to this, is consumers in the United States, certainly, consumers in Europe. Asian countries are going to be affected as well. Ironically, I think one of the winners short term, I don't know how long it is over the weekend, I looked at the stock prices for the 5 major oil companies in the United States, and they all went up significantly in the last 28 days. And this is all a reflection of when worldwide supply is curtailed by 20%, when your supply contracts like that, and the demand stays the same, the price is going to go up, and that's exactly what's happening. So that's in the short term. In the long term, it still is anybody's guess. What is our end game in Iran? Are we going to be successful in having a regime change? Are we going to be successful in making the Strait of Hormuz safe for travel? And when will we make it safe for travel? And who has to do that? Is that our burden? Is that the burden of other countries? That's obviously one of the points President Trump has been making is it should be Australia and Japan and China who are helping, and they're not helping right now.
Rick?
Just to echo what most of the prior speakers have said, I think the big winner currently is Russia. With sanctions removed on oil, with the price of oil up, that's good for Russia. That helps them fund and fuel this war against Ukraine. If Russia's doing well, a loser is obviously Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, which is unfortunate in many respects. Certainly consumers in the short term are losers. The Iranian people are losers in all of this. I think there is a lust for change in that country, and I hope it comes about. But they're losing, and they're struggling through all this. China, Asia, obviously, Europe to a little bit lesser extent, are current losers. And as Kristin said at the outset, permanent losers are sadly the families of the fallen soldiers. And all of our thoughts should be with these brave people.
I think there's two things fundamentally going back directly to the war. If you look back to the shocks of the 1970s on 73 and 79, at that time, we were, of course, an energy importer. Now we're an energy exporter in large part because of natural gas. And so that fundamentally changes the dynamic here as to what the impact will be on our country economically. And I think the other factor is back in the 1970s, as a percentage of our gross domestic product, we spent much more on energy than we do today. It's gotten more efficient over the last 50 years. And so the consumers are being hurt, small businesses are being hurt. But I don't at this juncture today, and that could change, see where the economy at large is going to have the type of negative response that you saw in the 1970s. Again, because
we're less dependent on
and we're an
Mideast
exporter.
oil.
Yeah, we're an exporter. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day that talked about Texas and how it's going to get $1 billion more in tax revenue over the next few years because of the increases in prices that the gas producing states, they're going to make out like bandits in this thing if the price continues to be high.
Okay, I want to also talk about this. Peter, you mentioned the liquefied natural gas element, and Tom, you did too, in regards to how that is affecting Europe. Now, so there was in Qatar, there was a facility that was attacked, and it wasn't destroyed, but certainly its production would be limited even if the war ended tomorrow. So just talk a little bit about U.S. liquefied natural gas and versus the Mideast supply of liquefied natural gas, if you can, Peter.
Well, that Qatar facility, they had a 17% drop in capacity as a consequence. Even like long-term contracts, they cited Italy, Belgium, South Korea, China are all going to be impacted. So as Tom had indicated, we are now a net exporter. So that demand is going to grow even more significantly as a consequence. So that's a huge plus overall for our economy. One statistic, going back to what a couple people talked about, the impact on low-income people, that I do want to mention, though, when I was a member of the National FEMA board, one of the statistics that was used, and this is about 12 years ago, it's only gotten worse. Back then, it was 62% of Americans could not survive a $500 emergency hit in the form of a natural disaster. Now it's 66%. So think about that. So small increases in energy prices desperately affect them. And last year in the United States, energy costs went up, 13% nationwide. And so, Kristin had mentioned, rightfully so, and it's good that her group is really focused on this. But low-income people desperately do need us to be focused on helping to hold down their costs. And all these initiatives that we have, I think, will have a very important impact.